guys, today may be a little bit of a, serious topic in terms of what my channel is usually like, but I felt the need to get it out and for people to understand a little bit about it. Today I will be talking to something that unfortunately is very close to my heart and unfortunately is very, very much a part of my history. Not because of what I have, but because it's part of my birth mum's life and part of why I was put in care in the first place. I'm going to be talking about Munchhusen Syndrome by Proxy. Now, for those who don't understand or don't know, it now has a different name. It's now called fictitious disorder by proxy. This is a condition, I say condition, it's not really, I don't know what else you'd call it. It's a mental health condition where a carer, a primary caregiver or a mummy usually, makes their child or children ill or makes up illnesses for their child on purpose to get attention for themselves. Now, this is usually a very manipulative condition. People are more likely to manipulate doctors to get information they want, or manipulate doctors to get treatments and surgeries and medications they want for the person that's apparently sick, when that child or that young person or the person they care for isn't actually sick or isn't actually that damaged or doesn't have that condition. It is heard of to some extent, but in order for it to be seen as a reason to be taken away from your parents, I think it has to be rather serious, because it was for us. And it's not really seen as physical abuse as much. It's more seen as emotional abuse, because they're not actually the ones catering the harm to that child. It's the doctors who have been manipulated by them to give treatments, to take medications, to do operations, to chuck them in the psych ward if they need to, or if they're told to. Because parents are seen as a trustworthy provider of information and a trustworthy historical provider. So they're able to give doctors information about what happened, when it happened, why it happened, and doctors, nurses, operation people, I don't quite know the word of that, they're likely to believe a parent, because a parent is seen as a worthy historian on their own child's behaviour, on their child's condition, on their child's illnesses and weaknesses and developmental stuff. So they're going to be believed, but they are also, people with this condition are very good at manipulating people and getting what they want. In terms of what it does to the child can vary, and how it manifests in the child can vary. Now, when I was a lot younger, this is when I was still with my birth mum. I'm going to tell you a story. I apologise if it goes a bit rambly. I'm trying to remember something that causes me significant grief now, even as an adult. I was with my brother and we lived with my mum, my birth mum, and I don't actually know where we live, but the case work and the social work notes and everything else said we once lived above a pub. She was a prostitute and she did bar work and fish and chip work on and off to, I guess, pay for rent or pay for stuff when she needed it. She had both me and Bryn at home. She wasn't coping. The way she coped was to try and get attention for herself rather than actually get counselling, therapy, social services report, social care help. She missed a load of doctor's appointments and not health inspector, that's the wrong thing. What is the word? The health inspector person that comes to babies in their house. Health visitor, that's the word we're looking for. She missed a lot of health visitor appointments, and in the records when the health visitor came, they noticed that the house was grubby and I was cold. Now that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I'm naturally cold, but when I was reading the records, it surprised me that my mum missed a load of appointments. She was just completely and utterly not fit to be a mother, and I don't understand why she was one. Now, when I was about 5 months old, my mum was in the hospital with me. I'd assume she'd come to visit. I don't think she stayed with me. I think she must have come to visit because she obviously had Bryn at that point as well, my brother. And there was, according to the medical notes, an incident that happened. Now, we all think that is my birth family, well, not my birth family, sorry, my adoptive family and doctors and nurses from back there and health visitors. We all think she tried to kill me. She tried to smother me with a pillow. But because there wasn't any actual proof, like no one saw her do it, no one actually noticed it had been done, I was basically left in the room with her. However, they did notice something was wrong. They did actually use their brain. They did call social services. Me and Bryn were placed on child protection registers and put into foster care that night. So I'm glad they listened, or did whatever they needed to do to report it. I think because nurses and doctors, they're mandated reporters. They have to report abuse. They have to report abuse, neglect, sexual assault, sexual abuse. And so do social workers, so do health visitors. Now, because health visitors had logs that I'd missed appointments, or Mum had missed the appointments, that she was ignoring doctors, I wasn't getting medication that I needed, I wasn't getting the help I was needing. I was born early as it was, so I was already developmentally delayed from the start. And there was a lot of missed appointments that my mum was supposed to go to, which she completely missed out on. Now, as an adult, I realise it was because she didn't want others to notice what she was doing. I mean, her behaviour was erratic. Her care for her children was clearly not the greatest. She often missed appointments. She often didn't want to care for us both, or couldn't care for us both. So Bryn was often with a friend, or and when I was like taken to a hospital where we live now, I was taken to the hospital, the children's hospital where we live now. And she could come and visit then, because she'd bring Bryn, and Bryn would go in the creche. So she'd come and visit then. However, she won't come and visit when I was in the Rotherham, which is where I was born. That didn't make any sense to me when I read that, because I'm her daughter. Surely she should be worrying about me over anything else. And instead, she stayed at home with Bryn. Or she made an excuse for missing an appointment, or missing a health visitor appointment, or not going somewhere when she needed to. And that happens quite a lot. But she was already, even before Munchausen syndrome was her diagnosis, Munchausen syndrome by proxy, I should say. Munchausen syndromes are slightly different. She was already neglectful, she was already abusive, she was already doing so many things that she just shouldn't have done with children. And I don't understand. I mean, yes, she basically, I say it as get rid of me at 5 months because of what she did. I was placed in foster care. So was Bryn. But she fought to keep Bryn, and that upset me. And it still upsets me to this day. However, now I see why she fought to keep Bryn. Because when I look at the medical records, when I look at the books that we got off the social care people, when I look at the stories that they made up when we were in care so we could understand what was going on, there was always, from what I could tell, a favour towards him because of her past, because of what happened to her in the past. I think it was all basically a very much a psychological thing. because she didn't know what to do. She was clearly not brought up correctly by her own mum and my nana, and her mum was married 3 times. She obviously didn't know what to do with children. My birth mum was the first out of 7 children she had, and she didn't know what she was doing. She was married 3 times. My birth mum had her name changed 3 times. Some of those blokes weren't the best blokes. So, of course, my mum's own past and psychological issues followed her into being a mum herself to me and Bryn. So a lot of issues she had were never treated. And now you add on top of the untreatment issues she had, add on pregnancy and 2 of them within 10 months, and then add on being alone because obviously she couldn't name dads for either of us, and she wasn't with either dad, so she had to look after us both. And I think originally she just got overwhelmed and she wanted attention that wasn't just attention from her birth mum, who was also, I assume, abusive, like her mum, my nana. And that's where I think she ended up with so many issues, because she didn't know what to do. She was overwhelmed. She wanted attention. And that's how she got it, by being abusive towards me and abusive towards Bryn and faking illnesses for both of us, because according to the medical notes, as soon as my birth mum would leave and I was in hospital, these issues, she noted, would go away. And that's quite a similar notation you'll find with a lot of people whose parents, carers, primary caregivers have Munchausen syndrome by proxy. The illnesses or the issues or conditions they have, or the parents or carers say that these children have, will go away once the parent's gone, because the child isn't being made to have the issue. The child isn't being shown how to have it. The child isn't stuck with it because their parent or carer who made it up is gone. Like, I was brought to hospital several million times by my birth mum because of feeding issues. When I was in the hospital, those feeding issues that I had about keeping things down and vomiting things up would go, and they did go. Nurses would observe me and they were gone by the time my birth mum had gone. Most people with Munchausen syndrome by proxy, like my birth mum, are sneaky. They're good at hiding it. They're good at it because you're brought up to trust your parents. You're brought up thinking your birth mum or your birth dad knows the best about you and knows how to help you the most. And you trust them. And you trust what they're saying is the right thing. Especially doctors do as well. Not always, which is why when they're a mandated reporter, they will go to CPS, I think that's America, let me try again, to social services and say, look, I have an issue with this person. I think this is what's happening. And they will gather the evidence, and then hopefully the child or young person will be taken away and put in care. It's not the nicest thing. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's necessary. At least until that parent or carer who has Munchausen syndrome by proxy is able to get help. Now, in terms of help, obviously I'm not diagnosed with this, so I don't really know a lot about what happens when you need help with Munchausen syndrome by proxy. I know my mum had to go through a psychological assessment to be diagnosed with it. And then I think she must have been offered therapy or counselling, because that's how she got my sister back. But I think you have a psychological assessment, possible hospital stay on a psychology ward, doctor's appointments, medication, therapy, counselling, CBT. Like, I'm sure that there are a variety of options for people with Munchausen syndrome by proxy. But often when they have Munchausen syndrome by proxy, they also have other mental health conditions and a past that involved a parent or carer that was abusive. I mean, that's not always. It's not always like that. But from what I've read and what I've experienced, my mum had a past that was abusive. She wasn't taught emotional regulation. She wasn't taught what she was doing to me and Bryn was wrong. So she went ahead with it because she wanted the attention that it got her. I mean, sometimes Munchhusen Syndrome By Proxy can get people money. I mean, there's people with that condition that set up GoFundMes for their children with whatever condition they're saying their child has, because they want the attention, they also want the money. It never goes towards the child. It will always, always, always go on the parent, because the parent's the one who made up the illness or condition that child has to get the attention to also get the money. Like, the money's never going to go to the child or to medical care or to medications or whatever else it needs to go on, because the parent knows that that child doesn't have that condition. They know in the back of their mind somewhere, no matter how twisted their head is, that their child is not ill, that their child is fine. And the doctors will find that their child is fine, no matter how many times you try and persuade them that they're not. Now, I've also read, and trigger warning for people, because this may be slightly alarming, that Munchausen syndrome by proxy also has ended in murder before. I mean, there's two very, very much highlighted cases that I know about. Okay, one. There's only one. Yeah, two. One didn't end up in murder of the child, though. Kelly Renee Turner, she murdered her children because she had Munchausen syndrome by proxy. She's now serving life in prison on 17 counts. And the other one is very, very, very much worldwide spread because everyone knows about it, is Gypsy and Dee Dee Blanchard. And Dee Dee, Gypsy's mother, had Munchausen syndrome by proxy. She was divorced from her husband, who is now remarried. Gypsy knew she could walk, knew she could talk, knew she didn't need all this specialist equipment, but her mum was abusive, her mum was neglectful, her mum was unstable, basically. Made her child stay in a wheelchair, squeezed her, mentally and emotionally tortured her. She squeezed her child's hand, if you've seen her video, you'll see. Every time Dee Dee watches Gypsy and Gypsy says something out of line, Dee Dee would squeeze Gypsy's hand, as in to say, please shut up, but without having to say it, so she didn't expose herself. And Gypsy, by the time she realised all of this and she was over it, and she was talking to a boy, Nick Gojajon, on the internet on a Christian dating site, she said to him she's got a disability, she's in a wheelchair and all the rest of it, so she obviously was brought up to believe all of this, much like most people with Munchausen syndrome by proxy and their children. They tell their children for so long that they have these illnesses that the children grow up believing it too. But she managed to run away with him, and the neighbours just thought that there'd been a break-in. So they actually sent a welfare check over, like police over to their house, because the van was still there, Gypsy's wheelchair was still there, and yet they found Dee Dee Blanchard dead, because while it was late at night and they were talking without Gypsy's mum knowing, Nick Gojajon and Gypsy Blanchard got out with a plan to kill her mother so that Gypsy didn't have to deal with the way her mother treated her anymore. And now Gypsy is serving, I don't know how long she's got left, but she's serving 10 years in prison. And I think Nick Gojajon is also serving something quite similar because of their crimes. But the jury also noted that Gypsy, realistically, she was harmed for so long and she was hurt for so long that her mental health weren't great, her behaviour weren't great, that she wasn't involved in the morning, the murder even. She just helped plan it. She didn't actually do it, according to her. She got 10 years. I'm not sure how long Nick Godejohn got. And Dee Dee's obviously dead now, which means Gypsy's free from the behaviour. Gypsy's free from the people who hurt her for so long, which must be a weight lifted off her shoulders. I know for me that my birth mum not being in my life hurt me for a very long time, especially when my brother got more in contact with her again a couple of years ago now, and they talk. And they talk to my siblings, and he's met her new husband and all the rest of it. And when I found out, it really hurt me. It really upset me. I nearly broke a door because I was that upset. I kept throwing things at it. And I got in contact with my birth mum. Only, unfortunately, to be told she doesn't want to contact me any further. And that was like maybe 3 months ago. And I'm still very hurt because I never got any answers around why she did what she did. And that's part of the issue with Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy. They're not probably going to admit what they did because they won't see it as doing anything wrong. They'll probably just be annoyed that you were taken away from them. Like, they will be so manipulative and so misunderstanding and just completely and utterly self-centered that they won't even realise what they did was wrong. Or they know it's wrong but won't admit it's wrong. So no, Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy is not something nice to live with. It's not something you want to be throwing around like as a label or as a fun thing. It's not great to live with. And please, if you suspect it, please get someone help. If it's a child, call social services. If it's an adult, again, call adult social care. Get more information, as much information as you can get to help whoever it is that you think has been a victim of Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy, because you have no idea how much of a help that help could be. Even if it means that child being taken away from their parents or their carers, that's safer than them being stuck with Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy and continually getting emotionally hurt and physically harmed. Please get someone help if you suspect it. I don't care if it makes you angry. I don't care if it makes you upset, if it makes the person angry and upset. If you suspect it, or you can prove that someone has Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy, please get them help. Okay, I'm done rambling, because if I ramble any more, I'm either going to shout or get upset, because this is as I said before, this is something very close to my heart. I will leave a link to Dee Dee and Gypsy Blanchard story, and I will, if I can, find the Kelly Renee Turner story as well and link them both down below so you can look at them more yourself. And I will also leave a link to the NHS Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy information page too, so that everyone can have the information they need without being befuddled. Because I know that this might have been a bit of a ramble and a bit confusing. Okay, that is all I've got to say. Bye guys!